So I've spent a few holiday seasons in Japan. I was living there for a total of 13 years, and because of reasons like the pandemic, I wasn't able to return home to the US. So this was my first time spending the holiday season in the US, in my hometown in Hawaii, in a few years. Now, there are a lot of differences in the holiday season between Japan and the US. For one, Christmas is more like a Valentine's Day in Japan, but in the US, it's more focused on family and friends. There is also a lot more gift giving in the US than there is in Japan. And New Year's in Japan is a lot more quiet and subdued. It's a lot more family focused and revolves around some traditions, whereas in the US, it's more of a party or celebration of the new year. And in Japan, actually, New Year's is the main focus over Christmas because there is a long holiday. For me, it was usually between December 29th to January 4th, and everybody just kind of shuts down and relaxes for that period. So I'm Japanese American, fourth generation, and I grew up in Hawaii, and I grew up with some of these Japanese traditions around New Year's. Now, there's probably some differences in how Japanese American families spend New Year's at home, whether they are in Hawaii or from the US mainland. It probably even differs from house to house, family to family, just like it differs in Japan, depending on what region you're from. But because I've been living there for so long and got to experience New Year's there as well as here, I just want to share some differences that I noticed this time around between New Year's in Japan and New Year's in a Japanese American setting in Hawaii. If you're interested in life between the US, Hawaii, and Japan, and you're not subscribed yet, please consider doing so, as it's a topic that I touch upon sometimes on this channel. One of the differences that I noticed in Hawaii versus Japan is that there is more talk about mochi pounding here in Hawaii than there is in Japan. If you don't know, mochi is a sticky rice treat or food that's made from basically pounding rice and steaming it until it's kind of this sticky texture. And people will usually roll it up into these kind of circle ball type of shapes. And it's often used in dishes such as ozoni, which is a Japanese New Year's soup. When I was growing up, we had a machine that would pound the rice for us, and some relatives would come over and we'd make little mochis together. And my uncle and his family invite family, friends, and relatives to their house to actually manually pound the mochi with a wooden mallet and stone bowl. And they make mochi for each other and to give as gifts. And it's a good way to teach culture to the young kids and to get everyone together. But in the 13 years that I lived in Japan, both in the rural countryside and in Tokyo, I only came across mochi pounding twice. One was a activity set up by the city hall, which I got to take part in, and the other was at a school that I taught at. And when I asked the principal about him putting on this mochi pounding activity, he said that he did it because back in his day, neighborhoods would get together and people would come out and pound mochi in the streets, but it doesn't happen anymore. And even the bowls that are used are hard to come by. And so he wanted to share this cultural tradition with the young kids growing up. I think most people nowadays will just go out to the store and buy it, or go to the supermarket to buy the prepackaged ones in a bag because they're relatively affordable and they taste good. And in fact, my Japanese wife had never pounded mochi in her life until she came to Hawaii. Another thing that I noticed is with Kadomatsu. So Kadomatsu is a decoration for New Year's in Japan, and it's mainly using 3 pieces of bamboo and tied together with some rope, and there are some leaves and other decorations that might be put into it. So here in Hawaii, I was surprised I saw Kadomatsus being sold at Whole Foods and Costco. And growing up, I remember family friends gifting them to us and we put it on display. It might just be that our family was doing it wrong, but I remember putting it on display in the living room, like on top of the TV or on top of a table. But apparently it's not supposed to be in the house. It's supposed to be displayed in a gate or doorway, someplace outside, because the purpose of the Kadomatsu is to guide gods and spirits around that time of year. And also, it's just not really common for individuals or families to have Kadomatsu. It's usually businesses or companies or shrines that will have them displayed at their entranceways. And come to think of it, going to my wife's house, I've never seen Kadomatsu there. So I think that is something that's a little bit different. And naturally, food is different in Japan. There are a lot of cultural dishes that people will eat around New Year's. If you want to see what a New Year's is like in Japan, check out the link in the description. I made a video about Japanese New Year's while I was living there. But Japan has a lot of traditional dishes like osechi ryori, which is a bunch of different items, and each item has a specific meaning. And in Hawaii, New Year's food is more representative of the multiple different cultures and backgrounds of people. So you can have families get together and you'll have Chinese food, Korean food, Japanese food, Filipino food, and so on, just all mixed together. And that's fine because that represents all of our backgrounds. But the Japanese New Year's food in Hawaii is where I notice some differences. This is a dish called nishime. It's from the menu on Zippy's. So Zippy's is one of the most popular or most famous eateries on Oahu in Hawaii. And this is the nishime done by my Japanese wife. And looking at this menu here for Japanese New Year's food, I am not really familiar with these other foods. I didn't eat them while I was in Japan for New Year's, so I'm not sure if they've been adapted to local Hawaii culture or it's from a different region of Japan that I'm not really familiar, but I did notice that there was some differences. I also realized that there is some difference in what we call namasu here in Hawaii. In Japan, it's more commonly referred to as sunomono. Namasu in Japan is more just the carrots and the daikon thinly sliced and vinegared. Finally, and this could just be because I grew up in a household that doesn't really drink, but I don't remember ever hearing about otoso, which is a ceremonial drinking of nihonshu or Japanese sake. In Japan, we use Japanese lacquerware and we had this whole set, and you pour out the nihonshu and everybody takes turns drinking it from this special cup. But in Hawaii, I never really heard of this being done. Again, these are just some of the big things that I've noticed since moving back and spending my first holiday season here in Hawaii after being in Japan. Let me know how you celebrate New Year's in your household, and if you have some Japanese influence, maybe you're Japanese American or you live in Japan, how do you celebrate yours? And did you alter anything to fit your family here and in the environment here? I'd be curious to know about that. Again, if you're curious about learning or seeing what a New Year's is like in Japan, check out the description below. I have it linked. But otherwise, thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next one.